Good Sunday afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here in the home weather office for Sunday, November the 19th, 2023. In today's video, we have some interesting weather coming to your region just in time for Thanksgiving. Could your Thanksgiving be impacted with rain, strong winds, or some mountain snow, or will your Thanksgiving be rather warm, quiet, and dry? Find out more in today's weather forecast. So we're going to jump straight into the video as there is a little bit to talk about leading up to Thanksgiving Day and the day after and the day before. I know on Friday I'm going to Kirby Cove with my family. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. Going to get some sunset photos and everything for social media. And so for me, I gotta see what the forecast is gonna look like, and it's looking fairly dry for people that are spoiled about the day after Thanksgiving. So let's get right into it. This is the GFS model, the 12Z output for this afternoon, and we can see we do have showers that are developing across the Midwest. This is really not going to be a big severe weather outbreak by any means, but maybe a marginal risk for severe weather at most. We're getting into the time of the year where the jet stream really starts cranking up. We get more colder intrusions out of the north, and things get canceled out a little bit. So this system going to be more of that type of deal where we're not going to see a whole lot in the way of big severe weather events. But nevertheless, yep, this system is going to gallop its way across the Midwest and the Deep South, bringing with it some moderate to at times heavier rainfall. That's the system that we had yesterday that brought us a fair deal of pretty intense rainfall for about an hour in my neck of the woods. The system is going to be moving into Indiana, southern Michigan, as well as Illinois by Tuesday morning next week. So if you're headed out the door, if you're planning on doing any driving on any of the interstates, just keep in mind Tuesday looks to be pretty wet for many locations all the way from say Alabama into central Tennessee into Ohio. But by Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning here, that system really moves out quick. And if you're wanting to wait until Wednesday, perhaps, looks to be a much better day to do any traveling. In fact, looks to be pretty quiet for most areas. We're looking at dry weather. There's no blips of green on the screen. There might be some clouds, but hey, I could deal with clouds over snow or rainfall, right? Maybe a little bit of activity there in Oregon and Washington for Wednesday morning, the 22nd of November. And then there is your cold front right in here, going to bring in some pretty intense rainfall. But that too will be out of the area by Wednesday afternoon. And if you're really wanting to wait until Wednesday night, I mean virtually the entire country here is precipitation free other than Maine. Might get a little bit of inclement weather. Southern Texas, maybe a little bit of shower activity there, but overall 98% of the country looks pretty dry on Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving morning here, pretty quiet. The Arctic high is going to come out of the north, so maybe some cooler temperatures there for the northern tier of the U.S., but otherwise, again, not so cold, not so warm. It's going to be pretty average in many areas. Maybe a little cooler down here since we have some surface-based cooling that will occur because of this remnants of that surface high. And then by Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, you can see it's going to be great to do anything outdoors. Yeah, cold though, but it should be pretty good, except if you're going into the mountains like the Rockies, you could see a little bit of light to moderate snowfall. For Friday morning, November the 24th, California and Nevada looking perfectly fine to do any outdoor traveling or anything the day after Thanksgiving. Maybe going with family to a national park looks to be pretty good. And also for the Deep South looks good. And then that continues all the way into Saturday, the weekend after Thanksgiving. That's the 25th. And then this is the 26th of November. Looks pretty good. Now, we might see more activity here for the Northeast, but of course, small-scale patterns are not really to be relied on this far out. This is 180 hours out on the GFS model. We're looking at literally 8 days from now, and a lot can change. For the northern tier, maybe a bit of snow there for southern Canada. Temperature-wise, well, let's take a look at the temperatures for today. A little bit on the chilly side for California than what we've been used to, thanks to drier air and shorter days, so the sun angle is lower, so it's not able to warm up as quick or as long. Temperatures in the mid-50s across the Midwest, so that's a bit above average, or well above average the further north you go, and it's going to stay that way for a little while longer. We introduce some 60s by Wednesday, so pretty good travel day if you're doing anything, but this is when it gets a little chillier. If you're in the northern tier of the United States on the 23rd at Thanksgiving morning, in about 4 days, you have these cooler temperatures. This Arctic air does come on in, but I mean, come on, you can deal with it. 16 degrees, 20 degrees at night, not very cold compared to with what it could be on some other Thanksgivings. However, the further south you go, it does warm up, but still on the chillier side to start your Friday morning there across the deep south. And then maybe another plunge of colder air does come in thereafter by next weekend, but we're not seeing outrageous. We're not talking about temperatures, folks, that are going to be 5 degrees below zero, 10, 15, 20 degrees below zero. We're talking about temperatures well above zero, but on the cooler than average side for later part, or for late November standards for Thanksgiving. But it could be a lot worse than this. I've seen many Thanksgivings back in the Midwest. It's been much worse than this. Your temperature anomalies do reflect that pretty well. Definitely above average across much of the high plains, the northern plains, Canada, and the deep south. It's going to stay with you all while daytime highs will be somewhat below average. Overnight lows are not going to cool off erratically quickly, and so you're going to average things out a little bit there. Still above average for much of the Pacific Northwest for the northern tier of the United States, including for Canada, including also for the eastern half ahead of that cold front that we were looking at leading up just before Thanksgiving. And then here comes a new surgence of cooler air with temperatures about 5 to 10 degrees below average. Again, we're not talking about 40, 50, even 60 degrees below normal for Thanksgiving Day or for Friday. It's going to be a much more milder one than years past. And then going forward here into next weekend, we have another shot in seeing some more warmer than average temperatures across the Dakotas. But I mean, it could be a lot colder, it could be a lot warmer than average, and it doesn't look too bad for the time being, at least for the next 8 or so days. We're going out to day 10 here nearly, and still not looking bad, other than if you are in a microscopic location here where it's specifically colder than what the GFS shows, then you might have temperatures as much as 10 to 30 degrees below average than what the GFS model indicates. Remember, the global models are a guidance and not a forecast. We can just only base our predictions off of what the models are telling me. So why is this Thanksgiving not going to be very eventful for many locations, including temperature-wise, not going to be too terribly extreme? Well, it has to do with what the weather pattern is doing, what pattern we're in, and the flow that results in that pattern, right? So when we look at the geopotential height, this is basically a measure of, are the air masses colder than average overall? Lower heights mean cooler temperatures aloft. That transpires to the surface, versus above average heights, or the heights are usually above normal. That usually results in above normal temperatures. And so we can kind of get an idea. This is a trough right here that we just had. Here's another trough, and here's a little shortwave trough right dubbed in here. So we have a very complex pattern here where we have 3 troughs. Going to make a triangle just for the sake of things. And so going into early next week, we have large-scale ridging that's going to dominate much of the west here, and even into the central plains, and that's going to result in above-average temperatures. Maybe some below average at the surface, but to be more specific, and higher up you go, it'll be a little warmer. We have inversions that are going to be in place under this synoptic pattern. And the pattern doesn't want to change very much. Now, later in November, the weekend after Thanksgiving, we might get more troughiness that tries to develop here towards the northeast, ridging back west, a very classic fall pattern that could result in large-scale ridging that doesn't break down very easily across the west. You know what I'm talking about. If you all are watching this in California, Nevada, if you're in Oregon and Washington, this could result in some formidably dry conditions for not just on daily scales or weekly scales, but we're talking monthly time scales here that these ridges can persist for such long periods of time. A great example is not last winter, but the winter before of 2021, we had 3 months without rainfall in some areas of California, which is absolutely ironic to see. I'm hoping we don't see that, but the large-scale pattern does favor that, okay, in early December, where we have persistent troughing in the northeast, the eastern half right here, and we have persistent ridging across the west. So we got to really watch this pattern closely, because this could result in some very cold temperatures just in time for early to mid-December. By the 28th of November, we can see lower than average heights, and another swath of cooler air comes in, but then I don't like going very, 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 very far out here into early December, but to be specific, it looks like some of the models are trying to keep that ridge in check here, where we get more zonal flow, so we get more flow like this, and where we don't get very amplified at trough, and where we get the jet stream that does this, get a jet, the ridge that's like this in this configuration. Otherwise, we would get more northerly flow, and that would really keep the ridge amplified back west. In this case, we're not seeing that, which is, well, fingers crossed that the ridge never builds back west fully strong. I've made Twitter posts on this recently, and people disagree with my forecast. Like, oh, we're going to have an exceptionally wet winter, David. Well, people thought we were going to have an exceptionally dry winter last winter, right? Remember, some of the climate models came out like, oh, it's going to be a really dry one for California and for the Pacific Northwest. Well, while the Pacific Northwest was drier, way drier than it should be, well, we were in a La Nina, which means it should have been much wetter than average there, and California kind of took the cake as far as above normal weather. What I'm trying to say here is, just because we have El Nino, I want to make it clear, does not mean that, oh, the West, the Deep South, and the Southeast is going to have historically wet conditions. No, okay? Again, we're basing our forecast off of analogs, okay? And analogs give us past El Ninos and what they have led to, and what this winter might kind of give us a tail do on. In my research, each El Nino has unfortunately trended more extreme as far as our pattern, right? So I know we're not talking really much about the forecast now, but I want to kind of clear the confusion up for some of you that are like, oh, you know. But long story short is, given some of my past analogical data, all right, and everything like that, I am not as confident that this winter across California is going to be as wet as what I was thinking, because of more research that was done. So if you guys watched my latest winter forecast, it's probably still well above average chances that could still pan out, but there's an equal other side of chances. There could be a very, very dry El Nino like we had in 2015 and 16, because, you know, the pattern did not just, it's, you know, there's other things that go in hand with that. So the GEFS model has its similarity all the way through the end of November, troughing in the east, ridging in the west, and that could really be a problem for what might be coming in the month of December, which some of the models are already trending much drier for the west, which isn't an eye-opener for a lot of us that really want the rain and snow. If you're a snow lover and a storm lover, sorry, Ronald Martinez. Yes, I said your name. I don't know about December. I really think it's going to be a bit drier than it should be. and that, during El Niños, we should see at least more than 4 or 5 inches of rainfall in the month of December. Looking at the latest Climate Prediction Center here, this was just released this afternoon. 6 to 10 day outlook does illustrate that the United States will largely see below average temperature chances. In fact, all the way from California, the Pacific Northwest, all the way across the Northeast and the Deep South, which is good news. So evidently we don't have that extreme ridge in the West. Well, we do, because we're not going to see much in the way of rainfall, but it could be a lot worse. Looking at the precipitation forecast, the next 6 to 10 days, a below average, well below average chances, that is. 60% there for Oregon, Washington. Seems to be pretty fitting for early December here across the Northwest United States. And then across the Deep South, we are looking at above average precipitation. We'll see if that actually comes true. And then, of course, across the Great Lakes, also below average. 6 to 10 day outlook here. Same thing. Looking like it's going to be cooler than average chances for the Midwest and for the East, while the West might warm up a little bit more here with a slight chance for above average temperatures, and also for Florida. This combined with precipitation looks to be pretty dry here all the way through perhaps almost mid-December. The first full week of December could be rather dry for the West, for the Pacific Northwest, including for the Northeast, and for the northern tier of the U.S., while the Deep South does enjoy above average precipitation. Well, that's going to sum it up for today's U.S. weather forecast for Sunday, November the 19th, 2023. Before I do end it, though, don't click away, folks. You all need to check out my Sacramento Weather Center Facebook page. It is free. It is no cost whatsoever to follow me there right now. So after this video, click the link below this video and you can follow me. I do only do local forecasts for, say, Redding, Red Bluff, Chico, Yuba City, Sacramento, Lodi, Stockton, Modesto, Turlock, Fairfield, Tracy, Auburn, Placerville, Sonora, Pollock Pines, Truckee, and South Lake Tahoe. So if you're in the area that I mentioned as far as city-wise, please follow this page right now. Because I'm going to do more of these, since I won't be online here on YouTube much of this week, because for one thing, I work, and second of all, I do have family visiting, and thirdly, I am going on a little vacation on Friday to Kirby Cove in San Francisco. So yeah, I mean, this is the busy time of the year for me with family anyways. So if you all want to follow me today, go check out Sacramento Weather Center Facebook page now, as well as my Twitter page if you all want to check that out. I just recently posted something here on our really dry pattern that California is going to be dealing with, including really warm temperatures perhaps towards the first half of December. Well, that's going to do it, folks. Thank you all for tuning in to today's forecast.